Good evening and welcome to the ME7 Podcast for episode 22. I hope everyone is feeling optimistic, positive. Can we use those words being a Jules fan? I don't know. Can we anymore? I don't know. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a podcast that if for the next 45 minutes you're wanting positivity, you've probably come to the wrong place. Because we're Gillingham Football Club now and we don't do positivity. I'm joined by Matt and Owen this evening. Good evening, boys. Thank you for giving up your evening this evening to talk about our beloved football club and what a wonderful team that we have near the basement of the Football League. Matt, we'll start. All right, we'll start. So tonight, obviously, we're gonna review that woeful Mansfield performance. Unfortunately, we're going to review the wonderful interview that Mr. Paul Fisher released yesterday afternoon, because that's interesting to digest, I guess. And then Saturday's Hartlepool trip where it's got all the makings of them beating us, really, isn't it? Matt, good evening, buddy. All right, just as best as you can, sum up that awful performance on Saturday against Mansfield.
That is literally, I'm lost for words. It was dire, absolutely dire. It just kind of felt like they were turning up almost to a training session, like they were only going to give like 25% effort. That first half, probably close as being one of the worst halves of football I can remember in recent times from Jules, Jules players. There was just nothing in it. When we saved the penalty, we thought, brilliant. The crowd were right up, and you just thought, that's going to lift the players. Nothing. No reaction from them whatsoever. And even in the second half, we were better, but mildly. I mean, no shots on target. I think the closest we came was an Elkenbaggett header in the second half, which probably went, 5 yards over the bar. Absolutely diabolical. That is not the Gillingham team that we pay our money to see each week.
Yeah. Owen?
I haven't really got too much to say on it. Obviously, I did my fan cam after the game on the day. It was just a really pathetic performance from start to finish. We didn't lay a glove on Mansfield. It was far too easy for them. I know they're one of the better sides in this league. I know they obviously narrowly missed out on promotion last year in the final at Wembley, but it's no excuse considering we've put up better performances against Sheffield Wednesdays of this world and teams like that to come to Priestfield where we've got an absolutely wretched record over the past year or so, absolutely diabolical. I think Matt from Jules and the Bud put up the stats the other day. I can't remember the exact amount. I know that I looked up something the other day, which is off the top of my head. I think I'm right remembering that since the start of last season in league games, we've scored 6 goals in the Rainer men goal, and the opposition have scored 19 in that time, so just more than tripled that amount. But it was simple for Mansfield. When we come up against a good footballing side like them, it's going to be difficult anyway. But we just let them play the whole game. We didn't put anything into trying to stop them. Really, I don't think we got cut open quite consistently. It could have been 3 at half time. Stephen McLaughlin got in down the left hand side, just pulled it wide, which I thought was weird because he seems to, in his South End days anyway, he seemed to score every time he played against us, didn't he? But it's just another example of how simple it was for them. I know people can say we were better in the first half, but Mansfield didn't play in the second half. They just played keep ball. They were looking to just get back on the coach as soon as possible because they knew the game was won. We showed no intent, I think. I know Harris has come out and said he can't fault the effort. I can. I don't think we gave it a go at all in the second half. I really don't. I thought we were tepid. We were in our shell. We just wanted to get off the pitch as soon as possible and go home. I didn't see anything at all in that second half that suggested that we were really 100% mindset and trying to get back into this game. It just looked more a case of, well, we've already lost this game. We've given up after 40 minutes. Let's just try and get this 45 minutes done as quick as we can and go home. It was a absolutely scandalous and pathetic performance.
Yeah, Matt. It started right from obviously the game had even kicked off, because I thought the team selection was absolutely baffling. It was weird the fact that we'd obviously gone to a back three. Minoga, in the space of the he's played a total of about 56 minutes for us, and he is probably one of the worst Gillingham defenders I've ever seen. I just think he's utterly hopeless. But what was weird was that from the Tuesday night at Grimsby, where we'd played a back four with obviously Ryan Law one side, Robin McKenzie another, and then Aymer and Baggett. And Ryan Law obviously had, in my opinion, his best game in the Gill shirt on that Tuesday evening. He was tossed out the side. And then obviously Lewis Walker was also brought in for Scott Cashgett. I understand, because obviously Cashgett had an injury, but did you feel, Matt, that Harris had tinkered with it slightly too much?
I think after the Swindon game and after the sort of the Grimsby game, you were starting to kind of get a sense of there was a Gills team there that us as fans would be proud of. And when I saw the team selection, and you're right, Law had such a brilliant game the other night. When I saw that he wasn't, in the starting 11, my heart sank. I'll be honest. Minoga, look, I'm not going to say he's the worst player in Gills history at the moment. But look, yeah, I would have said, look, yeah, he's just come back from his suspension. Put him on the bench. Put him on the bench. Get Law on. He was, McKenzie right back. Was it Law? So Law right back, McKenzie left back. That worked. Stick to that. Goals will come eventually. I believe that we can score goals as a team. I know it's not happened at the moment, but I believe it will happen. But that defence was pretty solid against Grimsby, so why change it? Why fix it if it's not broken?
Yeah, very true. Owen, what did you make of the team selection?
I think it's a bit of an indictment of what we actually have available to us, as someone can play one game, get sent off in 10 minutes and then walk straight back into the team. I don't understand that way of thinking at all. If you're a young player with someone under someone like Neil Harris, who seemingly has the stance of he doesn't take any BS, I'll say, for the audience, you'd have thought he'd try and make a little bit of an example out of it and say, this is what happened in your first game. I wouldn't be doing anyone a right service if I put you straight back in, because it doesn't show a good example to everyone else, and these things happen. So I'll put you on the bench and you can work your way back in. It's sort of like a punishment sort of thing. But to bring him back in from the start, especially after Law had a really good game on Tuesday night, made no sense whatsoever. McKenzie obviously is a right-sided player. He can play on the left, but nowhere near as well as he plays on the right. And I think that was exposed a lot because he was left one-on-one a lot in that first half against, I think his name's Gordon, the right-sided, maybe back or right back from Mansfield, who was one of their best players, and he tore him apart most of the game. I just didn't understand the thinking of it at all. If we had to make changes, obviously this Cashgett one was enforced. That's fine if you need to make that change. I think we should have really just done that, just made that one change for Cashgett. Maybe, I'm not sure where Cashgett actually played on Tuesday. I don't know if we started with 2 up top or whether he played out on the width. I think I'm right in saying he plays with a 2 with Mika. I think I might be wrong on that. But if that was the case, then obviously just bring Walker in for Cashgett and just keep everything the same as it was, because for the majority of that game against Grimsby, we were creating chances. The second goal that Manjon scores was ruled out. Maybe the camera didn't pan over in time for us to see what it was, so I'm still not entirely sure. But the point is, we made chances in that game, and to just make other changes that I didn't feel was necessary at all, I really didn't understand. I don't like the idea as it is of us going into a home game in the 4th tier of English football with 5 at the back and 2 defensive midfielders, both of which were really poor on Saturday. Williams especially, I must say. It's just a negative approach from the start. That's not really something that I like. But then also that might just go back to, well, what other options have we got? Because, God knows what happened to Jeffries. He's vanished. We've not got many other options. But in terms of the team selection, it just wasn't right. And I think it just talk saying it isn't right. Where's Will? He's another one who seems to have just fallen out of favour dramatically in recent weeks. I'd have him starting over Monga any day for sure. But we're not inside the manager's head. I know he did his press conference today. I haven't watched it yet, but maybe he's given some hints about changes for Saturday. But I think the team selection this past Saturday was just completely wrong, and we paid the price for that.
Do you think in a way, Matt, that Harris, rather than building on from Tuesday night, he probably ended up looking into Mansfield a little bit too much and said, right, okay, because in his post-match, he said that they run all over us and they were a little bit physical. And do you think that ended up getting into his head a little bit too much, that's why he ended up going with a back three to almost protect us a little bit physically, and so we didn't get beaten up, rather than actually going, you know what, we played so well on Tuesday night against Grimsby, let's play to our strengths and let's get right at them. Do you think that Harris ended up looking into it a little bit too much in his analysis, and then that's why he ended up going with a back three?
Yeah, I mean, I generally think he did. I mean, when he came out and he said, obviously, they were being, a lot more physical. You're going to expect that from the Mansfield team. But I think when you start with a team that have played so well against Grimsby, they're going to be on a natural high. Those players, if you say to those 11 players that started that game, you're the 11 that are starting, that's going to give them that extra bit of confidence, that everyone's going to step up a bit more. When you start chopping and changing and bringing in a player who literally after 9 minutes was sent off on his debut, your defenders might feel a little bit like, well, hang on, how come he can just step straight back in? How come he can get straight back in? Why is he not working for it? Okay, all credit to him. I hear he's cancelled his international duty and he's decided to stay and work. And
wish he hadn't.
Yeah. Well, no, fair play. If he's willing to do that and work hard and come out and show us that I've had 2 bad games, look, it's going to change. We're going to get better. Brilliant. But I do think Harris made the wrong decision. It should have been the starting 11 that started against, minus Cashgate, that started against Grimsby, because we were the better team against Grimsby. You can't deny that. We should have won that game. The second goal should have stood. The third goal, I've seen an angle that looks like he was onside. So, we could have won that game 3-1. But look, at the end of the day, Harris will know. He would have gone home. He would have looked at that game and gone, I think I've made a mistake here. And I think we can expect a change against Hartlepool at the weekend.
Owen, obviously we mentioned after the game that the lack of fight and passion and kind of heart on your sleeve sort of stuff was highly concerning, and that's a thing that didn't sit well with me, was that I've got no problem with a football team not being quite good enough, but what I've got a problem with is a football team that doesn't give 100%, doesn't put the heart on the sleeve, and quite frankly doesn't actually give 2 craps. And that team on Saturday afternoon, even the ones that come off the bench, they didn't remotely look like they even cared, did they?
I think Gabo did, in fairness to him. But
Gabo, that's about it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a problem in itself, really. Not that he cares, that you're relying on, how old is he, 17, 18, something like that, someone of that age to set the precedent for the rest of the team, which involves players who have played in, the Championship. They're 30 plus years old and things like that. It's wrong. I think they just gave up. I think the heads just dropped after the second goal. We didn't really get any sort of reprieve when Morris saved the penalty, because I think they only scored 5 or so minutes after that. And I was saying to Reece for most of the first half, have we been in their half yet? And we both went, I don't think so, no. And that sort of something, we were just bullied the whole game, really. I think I was going to quickly go back to the formation and what I talked about with having 2 older midfielders. I don't know about you two, but I really don't think we can play Reeves and O'Keefe together too much, because there's just no legs there at all, is there? When we're playing against aggressive pass inside who can play between the lines, you don't have either of them don't seem to be able to go back and get back in time, because I just don't have the legs for it. And it's just a bit of an issue. Maybe the idea is more to have Jeffries there, but obviously with his injury we don't know. But yeah, as I said earlier, I just don't think there was anything in that second half that suggested to me that the players did give 100% or they did really believe or care. I get confidence will be low, but at the same time, you there's people there who pay there are no money from the work to go and watch the performance and to watch the team give up after 40 minutes. It's just not good enough. I think we even showed more fight in the games where we lost 7-2 to Oxford. At least we don't get me wrong, we were absolutely abysmal for the whole game, but we still managed to score 2 goals in the second half. So at least we were giving it something, even though we knew, I'm sure the players knew on the pitch that the game was well gone, but they still seem to have the mentality of, and this is the point, if you believe as a player that it's very, very unlikely you're going to get back into a game, you still think, well, all you've got to do is, I find it quite obvious from obviously a non-footballer point of view, but I just think the mentality is just be like, well, I don't really believe we're going to get back into this game. I'll try and believe, but then I'll look around me and see all the people here paying to come here. It's like, well, if we're not going to get back into the game, we're at least going to try and give these supporters here a reason to believe that we did give it a go. If it somehow miraculously comes off, then amazing. If it doesn't, then at least we can go back into the dressing room and go home tonight knowing that we didn't give up and we did give it a go. And there was none of that Saturday. It's looked like a case of, well, we've lost this game. Can we hurry up and go home now, please?
And it's weird, Matt, isn't it, that previous Neil Harris teams that I've watched, both at Cardiff and Millwall, have had that mentality where they will fight to the very end, whether it's a game has gone or it hasn't gone. They are, both these sides that he managed at Cardiff and Millwall, they were nasty sides to play against in terms of the fact that they would be in your faces, they'd run through brick walls, and they would not stop running for 90 minutes plus. I don't see that with this dual side. I do not see a side that is prepared to run through brick walls for their manager. Now, is that players in that dressing room that have just a losing mentality? Because I go through the squad, and the fact of the matter is that you've probably got 3 of the back 5 have all been relegated. You've got a midfield that have all been relegated. You've got a front 3 all been relegated. So is that the fact that they've just got a sheer losing mentality? Or is it a fact that Harris is doing isn't quite paying off, and maybe we've got to start looking at him? I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it?
Look, not all the blame can be put on Harris, because I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. When you're a manager, when you name your 11 players to start the game, you put your full trust that what you've done in the training pitch, during the week is going to pan out. It's up to those players to perform. Now, I understand. I never played pro football. I only got to semi-pro when I was younger. But when you play in front of a crowd, when they start getting on your backs, your head does start dropping. When things aren't going well, if you concede an early goal, you think, oh, God, here it goes. We're going to be rolling into, another terrible game. But what I remember from ex-Gills players from back in the day, and the one that stands out to me always is Andy Hessenthaler, is from the second that ref blew his whistle to start the game till the end of the game, or until we got subbed off, he gave everything. He literally put his heart on his sleeve. He ran through brick walls, and it wasn't for the manager, it was for the fans, because he fed off that enthusiasm, and we loved him for it. And the reason I think a lot of Gills fans at the moment are so downhearted is because no current Gills player seems to do that. Give everything from minute one. If you give everything and you lose 3-0, but you've literally left everything on that pitch during that 90 minutes, Gills fans aren't going to be upset. They're going to be proud that you gave everything till the last minute. But just not turning up and starting a game. I mean, we work hard for our pennies. We all work hard, and we travel up and down the country. We go to games, and to see your team just not giving hardly any kind of effort, you just makes you kind of almost fall out of love, with the game.
Yeah, completely agree. And I mean, this is obviously we'll get onto the Paul Fisher interview in a bit. And obviously, the one question that was completely missed out, not surprisingly, was that obviously Reece had asked that, and I suppose it does touch on Neil Harris a little bit, that how have we had two managers that have proved and are capable at both this level and the level above, in Steve Evans and Neil Harris. How have we had those two managers in the space of the last 2 to 3 years and been top half in League One and now staring National League in the face? What, quite frankly, what the hell has happened?
Well, I said it last week on a forum. I think as much as people don't like him, it does go to show where we are currently, just how good a job Steve Evans actually did do for the first 2 seasons. I think if you look at some of the players he signed in the first year, right, so the Dempseys and Liverday and Oliver, any of us, I knew who Dempsey was, mainly because I think he scored a winner against us at Fleetwood at home once, maybe a year or so before. But if it wasn't for that game, I didn't know who Liverday and Oliver was. I'd never heard of him. And Dempsey, I knew who he was because of that goal, but I didn't know too much about him. So when we signed them two, I was like, oh, okay. And Oliver, for one, didn't come with a fantastic goal record. I remember that. And obviously, they turned out to be great players for us. You know, Jordan Graham is another one. Didn't know too much about. I didn't even know he was part of Wolves' first team setup sort of thing when he was younger before he did his big injury. So these are all players that came in and were sort of like gems in a way, and players that we didn't know too much about who went on to be really, really helpful and good players for us and propelled us to that top 10 finish. And then you have players like Conor Ogilvie as well, Stuart O'Keefe, who were here and helped us with that as well. So I think a lot of that comes through not a budget per se, but from Evans being able to just find these players who have been able to work for him and do a really good job for him. Like it's doing the same at Stevenage now. Like I think our team back then wasn't really a top 10 team on paper. Just like the one that he has at Stevenage isn't really a top 6 team, but he's found these players that people might not have thought about who have gone on and done well for him. You know, one that comes to mind, he had quite a poor record and recently is Danny Rose, since I think he used to bang in goals for, I don't know if it was Northampton or the team he played for before Northampton, but he used to have a really strong goal record in League Two, but it dried up really dramatically, and now he's back under Evans scoring goals again. I think it was Mansfield who scored all those goals for, which I think he was actually under Evans at the time as well. So there's that.
Yeah.
But I think it goes to show with Evans' first year that the fact that he was able to pick out these players who we didn't know too much about and turn them into as good a players as they were for us, sort of gave us that lift to get where we needed to be. Just players from the unknown who came and did a good job for us. Then in the second season, that's when I think, because obviously the first season was, I think that's a COVID one, wasn't it? Or we talk about the one after. The one after is probably easier to debate because obviously we got the first one cut off, didn't we? So we can't say for certain what may or may not have happened or whatever. But that's when I think when we finished 10th for second season, it sort of drifted away. I think the game against Blackpool was really when it drifted, when we lost 4-1. That's when I think the owner should have been looking at it and said, well, this is our highest finish since Justin Edinburgh. I think we were 9th, although we should have gone up that year, really. He should look at that and think, well, if there's ever a time to help and invest and help this team potentially take the next step from where we are now, it's now. Now is where we need to do it, because we've, realistically, where we were that year with the quality of player that we had, we weren't going to get a better chance, because we knew the seasons that Oliver and Dempsey had that they'd probably be off anyway after that, as they both turned out to do. So I think we missed a massive opportunity there to put a bit of money in and give us that springboard, if you like, to try and make the jump from that 10th place finish to the top 6. We didn't do that. We had to lower the budget by the sounds of it, and we signed players who, for Evans, everyone says about how where's a Dempsey and an Oliver, there's I think it's one under name Cisse, Hodgson, something like that, who didn't do a job for us. But the players that he brought in were the ones that were good, were at that level where it sort of, you didn't think too much about the ones who were that bad. Whereas the players we signed now that have been somewhat half decent, there's so many bad ones, it doesn't really matter. Like Mandron was one we signed this year who looked half decent on paper, but he's not performed at all. And I think the reason we've fluttered down to where we are now is just because of the owner. Simply, we missed a trick not backing Evans a second time where we could have pushed on. We didn't do that. Obviously, we know how this last season went. The first half for Evans was a complete calamity. His squad was in ruins. He had injuries after injuries. We had a game against, I think it was Cheltenham, wasn't it, where half the team were just kids because we had nothing else. Scally obviously come out saying we had a good budget and a good amount of money, which wound everyone up. And everyone could see then, well, not everyone, because I know a lot of people blamed Evans regardless because, of his history and stuff. but a lot of people could see that it was a case of he had no budget and we were just existing and we were only going one direction. And by the time Harris had come in, we all knew, because I think we were 10 points adrift or something like that when Harris came in, wasn't it? And part of that is obviously down to Evans, of course, but we obviously faffed around for 3 weeks with Lovell, who I'm sure Scally was desperate to bring in to cut costs, but it didn't happen. And by that time, we had such a depleted squad. We were so far behind that, as well as Harris did to get us to as close as he did in the end, I think the damage was ultimately done at that point. And we just have players now who, players we bring in are dictated by the budget. We all know that. And our budget is, I think Fisher came out yesterday and said it's like in the middle of League Two, which I don't believe, to be honest. But, if it was, I think given we're on paper one of the bigger teams in this league, not the biggest, but one of the biggest, I would say. And we've just come down for League One. I think if we had that sort of budget, would be looked at as an interesting proposition for League Two players. Yet the ones we bought in, really, the majority, just bargain basement, not good enough. People like Che Alexander is not getting a look in now. Lewis Walker, he's a hard worker, I'll give him that, but he's not going to score goals for this football club. He just isn't. Sean Williams was one I was quite excited about, but I think I'm getting the idea of what people were saying about his legs have gone a bit. I think that he's starting to become a bit more evident every game I see him. Jordan Green's showing glimpses, but he's shifted off a little bit. Adelican's been one of our better ones of the past few weeks, I'd say. Wright started well. He's now disappeared. Jeffries played for half an hour and disappeared. I don't like saying it, but I've said to a lot of people, it's a damning indictment that we are where we are as a football club in 2022, and we still have Max Amer as a first choice centre half. I mean, I'm not pinning it all on Max Amer, obviously, but I think it is just a good example of how we've fallen over the past however many years, and he's still here. And and I've gone on for this point a little bit. I'm trying to wrap it up and find the right way to put it, but I suppose the reason we are where we are and where we've fallen is because we have a lack of investment. A lack of investment means a lack of quality players coming through the door. I was surprised no one asked Fisher actually about the Tucker money, unless someone did and he didn't answer. Maybe I didn't see it, but I know he definitely didn't answer if it was asked. But I'd like to know about that, because that's more money that we don't know where that is. Lack of investment means lesser players, which means lesser quality, which means lesser or lower finishing positions.
I mean, Steve Baker kind of backs it up as well and said, if someone thinks that Lewis Walker is a player that Neil Harris wanted for 4 weeks in the close season after letting him go from a trial period, then that person is deluded. It's totally farcical, and these players can't be his first choice in the transfer market. I mean, Harris said himself to us at Folkestone, didn't he, that he had a deal in place for Paul McCallum, and his agent was, or his words were that the deal has legs, but his agent was being a bit of a bugger, and lo and behold, 2 weeks later there was a court injunction written against Scally, and we had to pay 300k, and I get and you don't have to be a rocket scientist where that money went for McCallum.
I think just to quickly say on the Walker thing, I've said it before. I think when we spoke to him at Folkestone, we knew, we can say it all now because it's irrelevant at this point, but we all knew we wanted McCallum. I think we also got the idea that he was looking at Marquis, although he didn't say as much on that. But I think, I've said it before, anyone who thinks he's actually chased Lewis Walker for 4 weeks is a bit in denial. No one goes after a player like that for 4 weeks. I'm sorry, you just, with that goal record and level he's played at, he's not someone you look at for 4 weeks. I think it's just a case of he was here for a couple of games. Harris probably thought not good enough, went to Wimbledon, wasn't good enough for the grade there, and we thought, well, we don't have any money, we're not going to get who we want, we just have to take him for the numbers, and it's going to work out how it's meant to work out.
Yeah, Darren then put, I don't believe the players don't care, I just don't think they're up to the level. I don't think the majority of these players, one or two aside, or even Harris's first, second, or even third choice. Then not, are they? And I think you don't have to be a rocket scientist. Let's move on to the Paul Fisher interview then, and that was obviously released yesterday afternoon. I, for one, was disappointed, quite frankly, disappointed in the answers, the questions and the answers. More the questions, really. The answers were as diplomatic as you're going to get them, because they were just stupid questions that were picked out. I think three of them were the same. I think the comment was at the start that it was whittled down. Well, if that's whittling down, then really it wasn't a good enough job, because it was three questions of the same. So I didn't really understand it, and it was all diplomatic answers, and the questions, the really telling questions that got the most likes on social media, weren't answered. And the problem is, when you do something like this, you're opening yourself up for more criticism than what it's worth, because the interview, when you do a Q&A interview sat behind the camera, pre-recorded, you can pick and choose what you want to answer, and you can't face the limelight. And ultimately, the whole point, I thought, of doing a fans forum or a Q&A or whatever is the fans get to ask what they want, and those questions, what really needed to be answered, weren't answered. Whether we actually see a Q&A with Harris and Fisher in the next couple of weeks where it's face to face, we'll have to wait and see. But Matt, what was your assessment of it?
It just felt like almost like a marketing, video from Gilles. Just, let's do something nice, light-hearted. But there was a lot of questions. You're right, on social media, questions that fans really need to know the answers to, that they just glossed over. They didn't even bother answering. 100% agree with you. There needs to be a fans forum. Something, get the Great Hall open. Put some chairs out. You don't have to worry about food or drink. Just let the fans turn up and actually speak to you guys face to face and ask questions that want to be answered live. Because doing something like that, you might as well just said to a bunch of primary school kids, here you go, give some. Let's get some questions for the Gills chairman, because that's kind of all they were. They were sort of nonsense questions, He did one at the start, his first video. I thought, that's great. I'm glad to see he's come out. He's trying to introduce himself to the Gills faithful. That one last night, though, it's just rubbish, really. It's nothing we really needed to hear from them. We need something a bit more meaningful coming, I think, out of the club right now.
Owen?
Yeah, I'm not going to be so quick to lay into Fisher for it, because I believe a lot of the questions that we really want to answer to can only be answered by one person, and I think Fisher, by that account, does basically back himself into a corner where he has to either avoid it or give a bit of a political answer. I think the biggest thing I took away from it was he didn't really mention a sale in terms of the football club. Everything with Scally he mentioned was more regarding partnerships, which obviously doesn't solve the problem we've got. The thing we need to be sorted is to get this club sold, so Scally is gone and is no longer a part of it. He's mentioned partnerships, and people asked him about Scally selling, which I know he can't. I'm sure he can't give a definitive answer, because obviously it's Scally who will go through, so he can't say on his behalf he's definitely going to sell it. But he didn't really give any indication that that's what Scally's looking to do. He looks more like it's a partnership thing, which isn't what we want. He mentioned the Great Hall, which I think riles anyone up when you talk about that, because who cares? I think the question that you asked me, which Reece put to Fisher, I would have loved to have heard an answer from. I know a lot of the things that we've got us into this situation, Paul Fisher wasn't here for, so that's understandable. But I think he should be able to have an idea of where we've got, or how we've got where we've got. And I think if we did do a fans forum, if all being completely honest, I don't really think it's worth doing if it's just Fisher and Harris. I think Scally would need to be there. I don't think that'll happen. But I think because a lot of the questions need to go towards Scally, really. I think Fisher is more of just a mouthpiece. I think he is there to find a buyer more than anything else. He didn't really play up to that too much. I think that is mainly the reason he is there. I would like to see a fans forum, but as I said, I think you need Scally there, really, because all these questions that we need answers for, that you're not going to get really a definitive answer out of Paul Fisher. And that's not really his fault. I think a lot of it he can't really answer definitively. He can more give an idea on, but I think we need if we're going to do it, we need it to be with Scally. But I think with Fisher, it's basically the sort of copy and paste of any chairman's chat or interview you've heard over the past however many seasons. There was never going to be any questions that put him under massive scrutiny. I think that's why they've changed the format to doing it as a YouTube video, not in person, because obviously they can't pick and choose what questions are what. If it's in person, you just get put on the spot. I don't think they would have liked that, so they've done it virtually that way, which tells me as a starting point that they're not entirely, sure of what their answer would even be, because it means, from my point of view, I'm not even sure that Fisher actually knows a lot of these answers, or even half of it. And you need Scally there to give the answers to the important questions, and I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. So I think we're sort of going to be stuck in this never-ending loop, as it were.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really boring to be honest.
Matt, I think the responses to when obviously Gilles tweeted and said that obviously send your questions in. I think the responses probably said all you needed to know on how the fan base really is feeling at the moment. Because if you look down that thread, not one question was remotely positive, and it was all centered around the fact on what's happened, why has it happened, and what the hell you're going to do about it.
Yeah, you absolutely. I mean, and you're right. None of this is Paul Fisher's fault. He's come in to try to at least steady the ship and make it look sellable. Hopefully, that's what I believe his role is. And we all knew it wasn't going to change overnight, but this club at the moment, there's just such a dark cloud hanging over us, and it kind of feels, I've seen a lot of players, so a lot of people are already saying, here comes National League, and it's how we feel at the moment, because it just feels like we're not investing in the right players. We're getting rid of some top talent and not making where before we would be able to sell them on and make money from them. We're not doing that anymore, and it just feels like in the last few years the club has just for some reason just slammed on into reverse gear and gone, right, that's it, we're backing up, and it's not what we want as fans. We love this club. We spend our hard-earned money to go and see them play each week up and down the country, and we're just feeling like we're almost getting fobbed off. The hard-hitting questions that were needed to be answered that weren't answered, it kind of just felt like a fob off.
I mean, one of the questions that was asked was about trialists, and Fisher come out and said, "Yeah, we're in the market. We're looking to improve the squad. We've had or free agents, should I say? But we've had trialists in to train. But if we don't feel they'd improve the squad, then there's no point." Which I agree with him. Yeah, 100%. If obviously it's not going to improve the squad, there's no point signing them. But interesting, because obviously Harris was asked the same question a few weeks ago, and he wasn't remotely interested. Does it suggest to you that Harris has probably gone, yeah, we're in trouble here, we might not have a choice?
Well, I could actually, funny enough, I saw it on Twitter earlier. If you let me, you're going to lose my face for about 2 minutes, but I can actually find you a list of every free agent in League Two if you wanted it.
I've seen the list though, and there isn't many names that shout out to me.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I didn't really want to go and look at it now.
Yeah.
There weren't. There's like two, I think, that actually sort of made me think, oh, maybe they'd be worth a punt, and that was Callum McManaman and I can never say his first name. He used to play for Walsall and Bradford. Lavery, Callum Lavery. I think he's Irish. Yeah. I remember a few seasons ago he had quite a decent little goal scoring run. Maybe he dried up a little bit now. Tom Elliott and Theo Robinson are there as well. I've been more inclined to go towards Elliott, but at the same time, it wouldn't be one that I'd be praying for. Yeah, we need another striker for sure. It's ridiculous that we're still saying this after the transfer window, but it is what it is. And we need to go back in for it. I think Harris probably has realised that what we've got isn't good enough. I think it was one of the first questions that Fisher was asked. He said, "Would we have liked more in yes. And then he specifically said forward options, yes, we would like more in. So obviously we know we've gone after some and we haven't got on. We probably safely assume that was Harry Smith, as we said before. But I wouldn't mind a Colin Lavery. I think if there's a player in there, he might not have had the best few seasons recently, but he has been capable of scoring goals at this level. I think I might be right in saying his best goal scoring season came when he was at Bury, back when they were a club.
Maybe.
I think I'm not 100% on that, but I think maybe. And yeah, I think he'd be one I'd be looking at. The problem is a lot of those players are all up north, so it might be a case of would they come down here. But I think we do definitely need to look into that market, because let's face it, they can't be any worse than what we've already got. Funnily enough, one of the midfield options is a free agent is Matty Willock. So
yeah, brilliant. Yeah, okay.
We'll give ourselves another 2 weeks to get that deal done.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I know Josh Chambers. Was it Josh Chambers has been training with us, hasn't he?
Yeah, Harris did mention to it. He mentioned to Radio Kent today, I think it was, that obviously there was a deal on the table. I think they are trying to get something sorted.
I'd definitely have him back. You know, if not just had numbers, but I mean, Harris gave him his first start, didn't he? When he came in, and he's obviously sees a lot in him. So you know, and I think it'd be worth trying to keep him if we can. But yeah, there's not many free agents out there that I think are worth a punt at the moment.
Needs to sort his attitude out there.
Yeah,
played one game, and suddenly thought he'd go and start playing for Tottenham straight away.
Yeah, true. Okay, let's move on to this weekend. Hartlepool. Just below us in the table. Believe it or not, they are just below us. But they are going to have a new manager bounce potentially, because their manager was sacked after Saturday's result. And Keith Cole is in there. I think he's on an interim basis. I'm not sure he's a perm. But he's a good manager at this level. Kind of knows the league. So yeah, Matt, with obviously Elkan Baggott away as well with Indonesia, doesn't get any easier for the Gills. Yeah, is it a 6-pointer?
You'd hate to say it in September, but it's kind of has that feel about it. A team who are below us, who recently just got rid of their manager. Yeah, they're gonna have that new manager bounce, and unfortunately, they're playing Gills. It's almost sod's law, as I would call it. But you've got to actually, I think, you as a from Gills' perspective, you've actually got to play on that, because he's going to be coming in with all these new ideas, and you've got to hope that those new ideas in the 2 or 3 days he's had training them haven't taken in yet. That's what you've got to hope for, and you've got to go out there and hit them from the second that ref blows that whistle. You get straight in their faces, you put them under pressure, you put the manager under pressure. Yes, he's there on an interim basis, but he's going to probably want that job full time. So he's going to, try and put his best team out there, but you've got to jump on it straight away from that first whistle. I know he mentioned Scott Cashgett is still a bit touch and go for the weekend, and I'll be honest, I think start Joe Gabode up front with Mandron. I think, obviously Elkan Baggott's away, so, bring Will Wright back in. Let's get Law back on there. I think it is a very important game. It's a winnable game for Gills. I say that ironically, knowing that, we haven't done well this year. But look, to say it's a 6-pointer at this early season, yeah, it is. I think I don't want it to be, but it is.
Yeah. Owen, thoughts ahead of Saturday?
Not many thoughts. We'll lose 1-0.
Is that your prediction?
That is literally all I've got to say.
What's your prediction, Matt?
I'll be honest. My prediction was we would lose 1-0.
Okay.
But then I'm saying that because every time I've said we've won, we've lost. So hopefully, if I say we're going to lose, we're going to win.
That's true. That's true. Okay, we'll wrap it up this evening then. Thank you all for watching. We'll wait and see. Can the Gills pick up their first away win of the season? Obviously not scored in. From at home as such in a long time. Can I actually win a game of football and score? Well, we'll wait and see, won't we? Yeah, you've been watching the ME7 podcast. Have a good evening. Good night.